Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yond, and I have a cold. Today with Kuntarkis, welcome Kuntarkis, we're going to be talking about living energy. So Kuntarkis, welcome, and my first question is, what is living energy?
Well, living energy, Michael, can be answered in so many different ways. It depends on one levels of understanding and one levels of thinking. To me, I've always seen living energy as a substance that everything in every single universe, and there are trillions of them, are created from living energy. It's an organism that is living consciousness.
Wow. And why is it called living energy?
I think that is the most practical name to actually call that substance. See, living energy has its own form of consciousness, and it evolves in every moment of every breath, just like all forms of life, no matter what form that life may take on. That includes insects, that includes animals, so it just goes on. But living energy, it wants to communicate with conscious beings, because what it does, it not only helps you, it evolves you. It takes you beyond the basic level thinking of logic thinking.
Wow. And where does it come from?
Living energy has always existed from the dawn of the moment, and that's going back hundreds of thousands of light years. In fact, trillions of light years. It just is, and it has evolved in the silence of itself. It's like I've said to you in many times before, if we go right back to the dawn of the moment, what you'll find is all this energy exists, but it is dormant. It's not moving, it's not thinking, it's not breathing. It has absolutely no awareness. But it's like anything in existence. Everything evolves in its own space and time. And what happened in that era, in that moment, was a thought by one single organism. And from that moment on, it had consciousness. It's like a human, Michael. When you have thought, it becomes thought consciousness.
Wow. When you have a thought, it becomes thought consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have living energy. So what is its actual purpose?
To evolve all species in all universes. That's its actual purpose.
Wow. And how long has living energy been around? You kind of already answered that one, but...
Well, we can answer that again. I don't believe there is anyone, doesn't matter how evolved you are, like if I looked at my father, 19 billion years in evolution. It goes trillions of light years beyond that. And I don't believe there is anyone, no matter who they are, no mystical god or anything, could actually answer that question. I believe it is a phenomenon. It just happened.
It makes me think that a lot of universes, don't they split off from other universes anyway? So
Absolutely.
It's like tracing them back and back and back. It's just an eternity.
Yes. Well, remember what I explained, which is the most simplest terms to explain how the universe evolves. And the universe itself is expanding. Now, there are many scientists that still believe the universe is one massive universe. And that's not true. If you take, like, say, 10 million, say, tennis balls, and you glue them all together like a massive circle, every one of those tennis balls is a dimension, is a universe. So you can imagine the expansion outwardly, continuously, in every moment of every breath. As we evolve as a species, the universe is expanding to our own thought consciousness in evolution.
Wow. I wonder how you answer this. How did it come into existence?
How living energy came into existence, that's a really, really interesting question, and probably not a very easy question to actually answer. So I'll try it this way. Living energy came into existence, and I'm trying to think of the word. There's a particular word that I'm looking for. Okay, living energy came into existence as a phenomenon. You know how we have phenomenons in this moment and all the moments to come? Something just amazingly happens, like a UFO suddenly appearing in the sky. No one's ever seen a UFO and suddenly there's a UFO. A mountain. Do you know mountains actually move?
Yeah.
They're moving. And yet no one would ever think that the mountain that they're living next to moves anything from a millimeter to a centimeter every 10 years. And that's incredible. So the phenomenon of living energy coming into existence, I personally believe, from what is within my database, in my knowledge, is that it came into existence when it had that first thought consciousness. To me, that became the recognizing moment of its reality. Before that, it was nothing, because it had no sound, it had no knowing, it had no understanding, it had no thought consciousness whatsoever. It just existed in the nothingness, in the blackness, like dark matter.
Because it grows itself as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it grows in consciousness.
Yeah, if you look at a cellular cell and through a microscope, and what you'll see is one will split from the other, or other ones will come and join. That's what living energy does. When the thought consciousness is there, other ones, from a magnetic perspective, are attracted to that one cell. And before you know it, life begins in whatever form it exists within. That's how it all happens.
Wow. So how is living energy related to humanity?
Okay. If we look at a human body, roughly, 4 quadrillion cells of living energy make up a human being. And I explained this on a few occasions. Scientists believe there's about 37 trillion cells in the human body. Partially that's true, but in reality, that is not completely true. If we go into a cell and open it up and keep diving into that cell like a rabbit hole, we will keep going basically forever. And that's a hard one. It's a hard concept to accept. So if we look at the human body and the cellular makeup, it's over 4 quadrillion cells. Quadrillion cells. And now those cells make up your body. When you perish and your body, say, is left in the sun and it dries out, you're less than a third of your weight. And I mean less than a third of your weight. You can pick the body up with one hand and it'll feel like a feather, because all the water has dried out and there's basically only a very small percentage of matter left. The energy of what you are, which is living consciousness, has gone with your spirit. Some of the essence has gone back to your soul because it gathers data, gathers knowledge. That's what evolution is all about.
So, Kuntarkis, where does this living energy exist? Can we see it?
Yes, we can actually. And you've seen it. I've shown you how to actually see it. You wondered what all these sparkles were, these funny little wriggly things that you see that are microscopic. When we go beyond our logical thinking, because we are so programmed as a species to actually think logically and not beyond it. One of the biggest issues with us as humans is we have a pineal gland at the center of our brow. That pineal gland is our spiritual essence. It's the connection to our mind, directly to our soul, even our heart. When that is coated with what is called fluoride, it goes rock hard and eventually shrinks to nothingness. And we don't evolve as a being, a spiritual being. And that's the way we always were, a spiritual being. But this new age of cleaning our teeth, of taking fluoride tablets, is destroying our own divinity, and we're becoming less aware of what is surrounding us. And all we're thinking is logical. And we need to step beyond that.
Wow. So, how much of this living energy is the makeup of a human being?
100%.
It's 100%. It's all of it.
Absolutely. And it even creates the physical
Yeah, wow.
through its own thought consciousness. And then it's manifested naturally through a woman's inside the womb. And it grows and eventually becomes a baby, then grows into a young adult, then grows into a human, then eventually grows old, eventually older and older, eventually passes over. And what's left is the body goes into the ground. But the spirit disconnects from the silver cord, which is living energy. The spirit then moves off into spirit world. Many particles of that energy, that data knowledge from that lifetime goes directly back to your soul.
Wow.
And that's how it is.
So, Kuntarkis, is this living energy just within humans? And what about animals and insects?
Living energy exists within every single form of life, whether it's human, whether it's an animal, whether it's a sea creature, whether it's insects of any description, even with flowers, trees. The energy itself is within everything. And what's amazing about trees, for instance, if you cut a tree in half and you see all the different layers within that tree, if you had a machine that could extract, you know how you extract, you know what they call by fobs, which is like the key, which is programmed from your car, which starts your car and also opens your car and closes it. It's the same principle. If you could take a machine of some description and extract the knowledge from all those different layers within that tree, you would be amazed in what you actually see. It would tell the whole history of what that tree experienced and what it actually knew what was around it. And it's the same with insects. Some insects live only a few days, some a few hours. But they also have living energy because they are evolving in their own way. If you take, say, sea creatures like, dolphins, whales, they all have knowledge. They all have memory. So that is living energy, allowing them to evolve. And if you actually study a lot of the animal kingdom on the actual earth, the evolution percentage-wise to a human is far and more advanced because we have become so logical in our thinking because we're taught to. We're taught not to think that we're individuals. We're taught not to think that we have the ability to understand how our body works. If you go into a doctor and you try to explain to a doctor how you're actually feeling and you believe this is the issue, they're looking at you in most situations and judging you because they have some degree. And yet most of those people can't even put a nail in timber. And I mean, that's not being critical. That's just being truthfully honest. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean you have the knowledge for everything. Knowledge, true intelligence comes from the knowing, which is awareness. And that, Michael, is living energy.
Wow. Does living energy have its own knowing? As in, does it know of its own existence?
Now it does.
Wow.
Yes. And the interesting thing is living energy can never, ever run out. It is abundant in every single universe. And it's not just in an atmosphere where there's oxygen. It exists in space. The reason I can say that 100% is because most of the Nakaron ships, when they travel through space, are run on living energy. They have created, say, propulsion systems that use living energy. They do their cooking just like we as humans do our cooking on gas. You turn the gas on, you got gas bottles outside, or you got underground gas. And gas comes out, it ignites, and you cook your food. Now, let's jump a little bit ahead in evolution. The Nicarons, they can turn on their instruments to cook their food, but it's living energy. They have learnt how living energy is living consciousness, and it can adapt to anything that you choose it to be through your own thought consciousness. That's why the Nicarons are so highly evolved as a species.
Well, I think you kind of answered my next question, which is, since it is conscious of its own existence, can we as humans communicate with it?
Well, okay. Now, communication is a very, very interesting factor. We communicate verbally, right, to people when we have a conversation or when we're asking a question, or we'll pick up our mobile phones or our house phones and we'll ring and we'll communicate and we'll ask questions to learn something or find out how this is going to be done. That's communication. Nicarons also communicate in similar ways, but they can also do it through telepath, where they can send thoughts and literally sit opposite each other and have a conversation through being a telepath, and you don't even have to move your mouth. Living energy will do exactly the same thing. You can communicate consciously to living energy. Just like when they're building, doesn't matter what they build, they can literally create through their own thought consciousness, through their mass computers, anything that they choose, like an iron, like a teapot, a cup, a computer. Everything is created through the Nicaron thought consciousness, through living energy, and manifested into physical reality. And that's how their ships are created. It's quite amazing to watch how the paneling system is literally manifested into reality. And when it comes and joins, it literally molds itself together and becomes one massive vessel. So it's living consciousness. So when they drive their ships, they're thinking through living energy. Every thought, every motion, every action is knowing that they're connected to that living energy. And they're one of the most, how would you say, very few in the entire universe that has evolved in such a way where they can manifest living energy right in front of themselves through thought consciousness. That's how they're evolving now, and they have been for probably about 2.25 million years of their own evolution. And that is really advancement. And I've got to say this now, the reason that they have evolved like that is because of Yakis. Yakis, when he witnessed watching them to see how they are evolving, he was curious to see how they were living amongst nature in such a way that they communicated verbally and telepathically to nature itself. And when their vegetables grew, they grew, Michael, in such abundancy, because it was like a two-way streak where they could communicate with living energy, which created the food through the Nicaron thought consciousness, and has never looked back. And that's how we can evolve if we learn to understand living energy exists, just by knowing we have an aura, which is living energy. We have an etheric, which is living energy. We have an emotional body, which is living energy. We have a physical body, which is living energy.
I see. Wow. What role does the self-created, fearful human ego play in relation to living energy?
Well, it's a sad one, Michael. It's something that I've looked at many, many times, and I've thought to myself, well, how can we actually change what actually is happening on Earth? And if we go back that 928,000 years, and we look at the Nicarons that were placed here, 87,000 of them, and how they mingled with the Neanderthals and they became a civilization over the next 274,000 years, we can then start to see how everything began existing. And the worst part is wars. There's been over 157,000 wars on this planet. Over 19 billion humans have perished violently in wars. Now, we got to say, okay, well, that's that. That's the past. No, it's not. Because if you don't resolve those emotional issues, they stay within your cellular structure until you deal with your emotions in the things that you have done that you shouldn't have done. It's like today, same thing. We go out and kill someone, we're going to be held accountable from a karmic perspective. And someone in the next life will take our life. And the problem is the wheel of life just goes around and around and around and around. We never learn and we are never taught about forgiveness from the heart. Learning to forgive yourself and others and moving on with evolution. That's how a species grows, in self-thought, in self-awareness.
Can the ego block our understanding of living energy? And if so, how can we overcome this?
Okay. Well, first of all, it can block it 100%. The ego is something that has been self-created and it's become a master amongst itself. And it is limited in its thinking when it comes to logical thinking. It is limited in its understanding of what the heart is or compassion is. It doesn't understand real unconditional love. What it does understand is the fragments of its own experiences from one lifetime to the next. And that's called conditional love. And most of us, over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, we have lived to those types of negative conditioning, even conditional love. We've never really truly experienced heart unconditional love because we've never been taught. And that's why we have so much negative emotion coming out in our children and violence. Violence today is just unbelievable around the world, what's happening. In my new book called Entanglement, The Long Journey Home, I really talk a lot about self-created human ego or self-created fearful human ego. And that's what we each are living in our fears. And that's why we're not willing to change or to make changes. And unless we make changes, how do we actually instill that same positivity into the children we're going to have so they have a better opportunity to have a deeper understanding and to grow beyond what we have created and passed on to them? It's got to stop somewhere. Violence and negativity has to stop somewhere in this moment and change the way we think about ourselves and about others and start becoming human beings, no longer just being a human animal, because that's what we are. We are nothing but a human animal.
How does living energy contribute to our personal and collective evolution?
Well, first of all, 100%. Second, when we start to take responsibility, self-responsibility for all our actions and our thoughts, we start to grow in awareness. And as we grow in that awareness, we start to attract in what is called the knowing, which is literally knowledge. Knowledge that we would normally never obtain. And that knowledge comes directly from our soul, through our mind, into our human brain. And it dissects it, but over a period of time, it will start to change because it will start to feel a balance and it will start to sense this power of love that it's never experienced before. Love for themselves and love for all others. And before you know it, Michael, over 1 or 2 or 3 generations, we no longer have the violence. We no longer need a police force. We no longer need tyrants in our governments worldwide. We no longer need an army, because the army doesn't protect us. It literally goes against us if we stand up for our rights as human beings. Isn't that true?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to let go of our fears. And fear is the biggest strangling rope around our neck. And it's stopping us from evolving as a being.
Wow. How is living energy manifested from thought consciousness into the physical matter of our 3D vibration? Can this process be influenced or directed?
Yes, 100%. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of discipline, because we are at the base level of our thinking and understanding, because we're not looking beyond logic. When we start to dwell into a higher realm of thinking, especially in our mind, because our mind is the overseer of who we are. Our logic is just our basic logic. Yes, it's absolutely needed, but we cannot live in a logical world without the mind, because the mind and the human brain is completely separate, 100%. And there's probably only about 100 people on this earth that actually know that truth. When we start to evolve in our thoughts, in the way we see things, in the way we accept things, we start to develop self-responsibility. We start to develop self-knowing. We start to develop in how we make our own decisions, and we start to become an individual. When we start all those things, we suddenly realize how happy we are. We're no longer just caught into this horrible level of thinking that we've been pushed into by the powers to be. We start to become that individual, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with individuality. It's evolution, and that's how we grow consciously. And that's an understanding we each need to accept.
Wow. How does living energy interact with the physical world? Can it impact or change physical matter?
Okay. If we look at the way we think now logically, right? We create everything by drawing. We draw it. So first of all, we have a thought, and we say that's a possibility. So we have an architect who will actually draw it, or an engineer. And then we see the cost factor in producing it. And eventually we gather the materials and we create it. And it becomes a physical object. So whether it's a motor, whether it's an automobile, whether it's a house, whatever it may be, that's how we create everything, through the physical means, by the power of thought, by drawing it, by seeing the cost factor, and constructing it. That's a physical, third-dimensional way of doing things. Now, if we can accept that living energy actually exists, and if we can accept that there are other universes of, say, extraterrestrial beings that are so highly advanced that are using living energy and manifesting living energy through their own thought consciousness into physical substance, then if we sit and we think about something like, okay, let's say a mug, a clear mug made out of glass, and we look at that mug and we say, I want to manifest that from living energy. Okay, we're having a different form of understanding, which has got great possibilities. If we sit and have one mug in front of us and say, I'm going to create another mug out of living energy, no matter how long it takes. And every day you sit and you put your thought consciousness onto that mug and you see energy forming, which is living energy, starting to show itself, because your consciousness is evolving in a higher realm of understanding. If you continue to do that, then eventually you must manifest directly from living energy through your thought consciousness into the physical human realm of solid matter and make that cup a reality. But it takes discipline, and it may take a lifetime or 3 or 4. But the more you think about it, you will take that knowledge with you. And in your next life, you may become someone like Nikola Tesla, where you believe all these things and you start creating all these things that you see in your imagination into the physical realm.
I see. Yes. Does the presence or level of living energy vary in different individuals or entities? And if so, why?
Okay, it does. The answer is yes, it does. Let's just say living energy is a high form of consciousness. And you've got a person that's, say, first or second dimensional in their thinking. And suddenly all this energy they breathe in. And by the way, every breath you take in every species of life throughout every single universe, you are breathing in living energy. And if you are aware of living energy, that can enhance not only your thought understanding, but your physical understanding and even your knowledge. It is there to help you. But if you don't take awareness of it, well, every time you breathe out, you breathe the energy out. But you have to understand that we are a magnet for knowledge. And if we have these 4 quadrillion cells that make up our entire human being, and all this energy is around us in every moment of every breath, and we can utilize it, can you imagine the possibilities of what we can create?
Wow.
Okay? Wow. That is the possibility.
What makes living energy swarm to a particular area?
I'm glad you asked that question. Okay. All energy is magnetic. And when I say magnetic, we are also, as a being, magnetic because we are living energy. We attract to ourselves our level of understanding and thinking, especially when it comes to negative emotions, because we have to deal with negative emotions to go beyond that realm of understanding where we no longer need emotion. What we become is a feeling being, which is unconditional love. We step into another realm of understanding. What we attract to ourselves is what we think about ourselves. If we're a very negative person, it's not the energy that's negative. It's us as a being because of our negative experiences, right? That's the difference. The energy is perfect the way it is, but we are not. We have experienced hardship. We've been murdered so many times. We don't trust anyone. We're doubtful. We live to conditions. So it creates a real issue. And we have to change that within ourselves and learn to step beyond our fears. And when we start to do that, the living energy starts to bring balance to us. And we start to attract more and more of that energy in every breath we take. And we can use that consciously to evolve into a higher being of understanding. That's the difference, because everything in all universes is magnetic energy, which is living energy.
Wow. And is it fair to say it starts off, or is it always 4th dimensional?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it's always because it's in a realm that we don't see, Michael.
Yeah.
But if we sit, say, not too much in a bright sun, somewhere where we can sit and just stare at trees, what's really interesting, what we'll start to see is a shape will appear around the top of the tree. And we'll think it's nothing. We'll think it's just a glancing of our eyes. It's not. What it is the aura or the etheric of the actual tree. It's its living energy. And if we stare long enough, some reason we seem to go into a deeper state of understanding or being, and we start to see funny little shapes, and there's billions of them. They're everywhere. And the more we do that, the more we begin to see the reality of what's in this hidden world, and it's called living energy. And every time you take a deep breath, that's what you are breathing in. Now, I have these sessions where when I go to bed, before I train, I do these deep breaths, and I breathe in living energy, and I communicate telepathically with living energy, which gives me the vibrancy that I need to continue with exercising, and I enjoy every moment of it. I'm not a fanatic, but I enjoy doing what I do, and it keeps me fit, keeps me healthy.
You communicate with it as you breathe
Communicate,
in.
yes.
Yeah.
And if you want something, right, if you really want something, say you want to improve your job position or the quality of your life or your health, or you want to include, like, say, you need more finance to, say, do this or do that. Well, if you can sit in the stillness of your own mind for, say, no more than 5 minutes and just believe the living energy that you are breathing it in and say, I know that I am living energy, and I know what I breathe in is living energy. I am asking for help. Please, can you help me create a better job where I will be more happy within myself, and I am willing to change? When you start to communicate with living energy at any level, even a negative level, it will change into a positive level as you grow consciously. And things in your life will start to change. Not dramatically to begin with. It will change to the level of your own personal understanding. And if you're a very negative person, then you will live in that negativity, and you will create in that negativity, not because of living energy, because of you, how you experience life so far. And that's what you have to change.
Mm. You've mentioned that living energy is conscious of its own reality and has been its own creator. How does this process work? How does living energy create and recreate itself?
Okay. You know, we as people, but let's use people as an example, or even we could use animals or insects. It doesn't matter, or birds, but let's use people. We start to grow up from a baby to a toddler, to a young teenager, to a young adult. And our eyes tell the world what it is around us. And that's what we believe life is. If we experience a lot of negativity, then that's what life will be. If we have a balance, then also that's what life will be. But what we need to understand is our thoughts govern every action, every moment of our existence. Now, this living energy evolves by itself outside our bodies because it has passed through millions upon millions upon millions of human beings, animals, insects, plant life, trees. And it takes with it evolution in its own form. So when we breathe it in, we have the possibility of having great thoughts for inventions, great thoughts for making money, great thoughts of bringing someone into our life that will love us as we love them. So our thoughts, because of the way we think, whether it's negatively or positively, or a bit of both, will govern what we attract into our life. And at the moment, what we're attracting into our life as a species worldwide is not what we should be. Because what we're attracting in is the past, our past, because we haven't moved on from our past. So we keep attracting the same form of person into our life, but we experience it maybe a little differently, but it always ends up upside down. So we walk away and we take somebody else. We walk away and we take somebody else. And in the meantime, we're creating children to all these different fathers and mothers, which is causing massive issues emotionally with our kids because they're not growing up the way nature intended it to be, a mother and a father to have children. That's nature, not what man is doing. That is not nature. That is self-indulgence. And I can say a few other things, but I won't.
The next question is, what role did the living energy play in the formation and evolution of life on Earth?
Well, first of all, it took 100%. It created everything. It created the spirit in the earth. It creates your spirit. It creates literally the flowers, the trees, the rivers, the waters, the oceans, the mammals, the insects, all the creatures you see in Africa, all the creatures you see in zoos. All of that is living energy. The cars you drive are living energy. The food you eat is living energy. Unfortunately, probably 85% of the food that's created is basically toxic poison for the human body. It's not what we were intended to eat. If you study the animal kingdom, it eats a very basic diet, and yet it is so strong, so fast, whether it's a carnivore, whether it's a vegetarian. That's the way life was meant to be created. But we've taken it to the extremes, and what we put into our bodies change our thought consciousness and keeps us at a basic level of understanding, which keeps us in fear.
Can animals and insects perceive or interact with living energy in a different way compared to humans?
Absolutely, but they're not aware of it, Michael. They do know about nature. They look, they do study. It's in their own way they study. They'll sit and they'll look around. Carnivores know that they're going to have their next prey. They have to kill it to survive. That's what nature has instilled within them. Eventually, in time to come on this planet, all carnivores will perish. It is the law of nature, because evolution will change. Evolution will get to a point where being a carnivore is no longer a requirement, because we've grown consciously beyond surviving on animal flesh, whether we're human or whether it's an animal. And the existence of species will change accordingly. I mean, if we study the insect kingdom and also some of the smaller mammals of our planet, they're evolving in a way that's absolutely amazing. I mean, we have a flying squirrel, never used to. But because some squirrel was jumping from tree to tree, probably because of a predator after it, over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, they created so they can glide. And all different types of insects, you only got to study them and you can see what evolution has actually done. If we look at the earth, how the trees grow, how the rivers flow, how the water's purified by natural resources. If we didn't pollute the oceans, say for the next 50 years, in a very small period of time, Mother Nature would purify the oceans, would purify the rivers. It's how it works. But if we continually do that, then it's a very hard job for Mother Nature.
I see. Can living energy be manipulated or used in a negative way?
It's not actually living energy being used in a negative way under its own power. What it is you are living energy, no matter how you look at it. And through your fears of your life's experiences, you create a good life, a medium life, or an ugly life. It's entirely your choice as a being because of your thought consciousness. And if you've experienced a lot of negative things in your life, your upbringing, not having a dada, not having a mama, or just one parent and no balance, then emotionally you'll be slightly retarded, and that's the truth. until you have that balance, because that's the way we were intended to live. That's like the animal kingdom. They live like us. And it's very important to understand that we create our world, each of us, in whatever way we do. But you know, Michael, what's really more interesting?
What's that?
Let's just say you take away all the negative emotions, all the fear, remove the way the human ego is, a dominator, a controller. If you take away all that from the human, you will see something so beautiful in evolution happening. And each generation will change. That's why the Nicarons did get rid of 87,000 Nicarons, because they gave them several thousand years to want to change. They even built a city for them. And they didn't put the walls up, by the way, around the actual city. Those 87,000 did, because they wanted to live a certain way. And they were left alone, as long as they didn't create disharmony anywhere else on the planet, because it wasn't acceptable anymore. Just like a person, going into a shop and stealing, right? Eventually that has to stop. So crime no longer exists.
Did you want to say that they were put here just to close that bracket?
They were, yes, okay, I can say that. The Nicarons were placed here so they could evolve in their own space and their own evolution. They were given lots of food. They weren't given any weapons, so they had no technology from that perspective. But what was more interesting is how those Nicarons evolved with the locals, which is man-woman evolving quite at a high rate from the Neanderthals. And that changed everything. And after 274,000 years of evolution, eventually they came across one of the most greatest cities of all, which was Atlantis and Lemuria. Lemuria was an art, built on art, up in the hills, where Atlantis was down by the ocean. But the funny part is they utilized what they call volcanoes. There were 3 volcanoes on that massive island, bigger than Australia. And it was abused because of what occurred through mingling and mating from purity with negativity. Yeah, you brought the balance of negativity and purity, and it created mass destruction. And over 3/4 of the Atlantean civilization perished, died, because those volcanoes erupted and literally opened up the earth and the island sank. And that was still living energy, Michael, right? But it wasn't the living energy that was making the negativity. That's where living energy will allow you to be as an individual. It won't say, I don't care if you're bad. It will just be, Michael, and go with the flow until you learn to let go of it.
Wow. Well, thank you, Kuntarkis. Is there any final words you'd like to share about living energy?
I would like to convince every human on this planet that living energy is a substance that they are created from. It is your divinity. It is your consciousness. It is your etheric, your aura, your emotional body, your physical body. And there are over 4 quadrillion cells. And there are ways to communicate with living energy. And I was very fortunate in 1988 to actually communicate with my own soul, which is pure living energy. And I learnt the secret. Well, you could call it a secret, but no one seems to be interested in that secret. You can use living energy to heal yourself and rejuvenate your human body. How far you rejuvenate it is entirely your choice. But it can be done. And it's not a big effort. It's a matter of sitting in the stillness with no one else around and talking to your soul. Because your soul will listen to everything you say. And once you start talking more and more and more, And you're not just doing it out of simple ego, you're doing it out of heart, you might get a big surprise and your soul may open up a doorway that you can sit inside your own soul. And you can then rejuvenate your body or any sickness you have. You see, cells are a funny thing, especially living energy. Cells will dissipate, bad cells, into nothingness and return to the pool of life and rejuvenate and replace those cells that have literally, how would you say, mutated. And that's how I healed my own lung. I rejuvenated all the cellular cell structure internally within that lung. People will say, oh my God, that's impossible. I also rejuvenated 2 ankles. One was a sledgehammer that fractured it 7 ways. And it put me off for about 6 months. The other one was from skating. I literally did a flip, came down and landed on my leg and crack, fractured the other leg, and said I would never walk properly again. I'd have limp. Never did. I forced myself for 2.5 years to walk properly in total pain and believed that living energy was healing all my fractures. Today, after all these years, I can run, I can kick, I can jump, I have no pain. That's the difference.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kuntarkis, for all that you shared. If you'd like to know more about Kuntarkis, he has a website which is etcconsciousness.com. We also have a Facebook page which is facebook.com/Kuntarkis. And if you have any reason to contact us, including if you're interested in having a private consultation with Kuntarkis, I highly recommend that. Bring any questions you have and he can share his answers with you. Then just email kuntarkis@gmail.com.
Could I? Yeah. Sorry. Could I just ask one little thing?
Yeah.
If the person would like to have a consultation and they're not sure about it, yes, they can go to the website and they can actually read about the readings, or they can actually go and have a look at the book. The book that I got, my second book called The Book of Knowledge, I Am Alien, the first half of the book is based on true stories. It has everything in it, the origin of humanity, all about different people, Nikola Tesla, Cleopatra. It's all about human disease, how you can uncreate it. And then if you go to the second part of the book, it's got over 400 questions and answers where people around the world have asked questions and I've given them a fairly good answer. So you may find something in there. It might be worthwhile buying an ebook, or which online from, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, whoever. And you might decide to look at those questions up, and it's got an index, and you might find the answer there. It may encourage you to want to talk further. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Michael.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I should have also said that. I totally agree. Yeah, well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for listening, and stay tuned for more.